You guys should have a chat with Bhargav. He'll tell you some very interesting stuff about what they're
Does
doing.
he have a smartwatch as well? A fancy smartwatch like you?
I don't think so.
Okay. So, okay, we talked about heat and heat waves being such a contextual understanding. It's not just a temperature reaching above a certain threshold. So I'm assuming to counter that, to have any sort of preventive measures against it, would also need to be as contextual, and it would be as complex a process, right, as just categorizing something as heat wave. So how do you go about doing that? Like, your paper is all about a heat action plan, right?
Yeah.
Probably, I think it's your favorite word in the dictionary. So what is a heat action plan, and how does one go about doing any sort of action against something which is so contextual, so varied?
Yeah, I think the day heat action plans end up in the dictionary is the day we know we're in big trouble. So I hope this is a term of art used by media and policy people and people outside. Well, they should know it. They should know it, but not enough that it's like Oxford's word of the year. Maybe I can start with what a heat action plan is. These are guidance documents that governments develop at a local level. So, say at the city level or at the district level, and they'll try and determine what the temperature threshold is for the heat wave, like we just discussed, and then a set of measures to prevent the loss of life. So they'll have an information dissemination system where they'll declare a heat wave and tell people this is a heat wave, this is the color of alert, so it's a yellow alert, red alert, whatever. And this is, very similar to what we've seen with, say, cyclone warnings and flood warnings in some basins in India. And it'll encourage people to take a set of precautionary measures that allow them to save their lives. But heat action plans are also more than that, because they also talk about long-term measures to reduce the heat effect in a particular place, right? So these are measures that will take many years to implement sometimes, but can have a solid effect on shaving off a couple of degrees of temperature in terms of what people feel. So in terms of shade, if you want to have more shade and you want structures that are shaded, right? So you want awnings over footpaths, for example, or you want awnings in certain places. And this is something we've started seeing, right? Like in some parts of Delhi, you'll see like these big coverings that sort of extend over. So it's not the traditional bus stop, but it's kind of bigger than that and covers more surface area. That takes time to do because there's land planning and investment and all of that. If you want to build trees, and trees are really some of the best ways to decrease the temperature. And I think anybody who moves from a city to a very shaded park area nearby, there's a park on the side of the street or a forest, and you'll immediately feel the decrease in temperature. But that takes 20 years sometimes to do, right? So there's a bunch of long-term measures. If you want to change, like we were talking about earlier, change the nature of your buildings.
Housing,
that requires a policy intervention, that requires some sort of subsidies, that require training of architects, that require a whole bunch of things, and all those things.
Also, that would require going through so much of bureaucracy and like a plan to just get through all of that, what clearances need to be taken. So it's like a
and it's not just that, it's also a change in mindsets and a shift in what's acceptable, a shift in aesthetics. All of those things have to change.
And holistic planning, right? It would require holistic planning where a lot of different parties kind of come together and decide how the city would need to be planned. Because right now, I mean, you're from Delhi, so and in Noida especially, like construction is everywhere, and I think construction and construction dust also adds to the heat, I'm assuming. And it's very unplanned, it's very haphazard. So it seems like a very kind of unimaginable goal to have.
It almost feels like everything that we are building is sort of adding to our destruction. However dark it may sound like construction is adding to all of this. All of these automobile proliferation will at the end add to the heat. So it's a very kind of a picture.
It's I don't think I think there's a legitimate push for better lifestyles, and better buildings, better cooling, better cars, and all of that. All this has an effect on the climate system, right? I think it's almost zero sum in terms of, you do something that's carbon intensive, it changes the atmosphere, and that then leads to a bunch of impacts, and there's a feedback loop. That much we know for sure. But there are a bunch of things that can be done that make it easier to have a better lifestyle, but in a sustainable way, right? I think there's consensus in the policy world that it is not unimaginable to have a sustainable, sort of climate resilient